There is a reason why some people are able to create their reality in the ways that they want, and others fail to do so no matter how hard they try. One thing is, you will not accidentally find yourself in a position where you're creating your reality. There is actually a formula, a code in which you can follow, which allows you to do this powerfully. In fact, a formula that has been known by the so-called elites, prominent families, royalty, even going all the way back to ancient Egypt, that they have kept secret and hidden from the masses so that only they may actually apply the formula and get the phenomenal results that come from it. The thing is, however, the formula doesn't take sides and doesn't have favorites. It just is, and works for anyone that applies it. And what that means is it will work for you if you apply it also. It's not something that just works for a specific set of people, a certain race, a certain creed, a certain family. It's just that for whatever reason, however it worked in the past, they gained access to it and put it under essentially lock and key so that most others couldn't. In fact, back in the day when most people were illiterate, it was contained in books and other forms that were similar because usually only the so-called elite class were able to read and to write, were able to actually disseminate the information that was in these documents or tablets, even if you go far back enough, to be able to actually use the information. However, we live in a very mathematically precise, beautiful, harmonic universe. And when you recognize that and you use this formula, you'll start to see that, again, it will work precisely with precision mathematically for anyone that applies it. There are certain universal principles and laws that are in place that you need only activate and use more consciously to start seeing changes in your life. And you really can create reality in the ways that you want, your reality in the ways that you want, by just more consciously activating these principles and laws that are already operating in your life. But once you know the formula, now you can start doing that intentionally and deliberately in a direction you actually want to go. And I've seen this work in my own life, and not just my own, but the many clients whom I have worked with get phenomenal results. One of the things we say in our program is if you do the work and trust the process, it will work, because these are immutable laws and principles that work for every single person who works them. And so we help people through guidance and accountability and a system that we give in order to do this. And I'll put some of the results that we get up on screen. That's actually been very recent results that we've been getting, because it just works so long as you work it. In my life personally, it helped me to develop a six-figure business where I'm able to travel all over the world, do it with the woman I love, who I just started a family with. We have a 5-month-old son, living a very happy and fulfilled life each day, day in, day out. Not only being able to attract many of the, we can call them things that I certainly wanted to experience, but being able to, in the moment, each moment, be happy, fulfilled, vibrating in a high place, and genuinely be enjoying my life. And although I'm sharing those examples, what I want to get across is myself, my clients, and everyone else in that regard are not, again, special in the same way the elite class isn't, the royal families, all this. It's just when you have the information and you have the commitment to apply it and do that work and trust the process, it begins to work. The process does not care who you are, where you've been, or anything else. It'll just work for those who work it. And so in this video, I'm going to be sharing a lot of this formula to you so you can get started and start creating reality in the ways that you want. Again, this is something you have to stick with and give your energy to. This is something you can't dip your toe in the water with. A lot of people, when it comes to this stuff, think, I'll just try it out. I'll just sample it. I'll just dip my toe. And then it doesn't work because you're not fully committing to it. And then they go, it doesn't work or won't work for me. No, it'll work every single time for every single person if committed to and actually applied. And so you will need to actually make a commitment to change some things that you're doing, but I promise you that if you do, you will start to notice changes. And so again, in this video, we're going to go over how this works and how you can actually get started with some practical tools. Again, we're not just going to give you information. I'm going to give you some of the things you can actually do to start applying this so you can start seeing results in your life. So without further ado, let's jump into how this works and how to start creating your reality using a proven formula. One of my favorite sayings from self-development, because it rings true. It's not just because it sounds nice. It's not just because, it's like something that's parroted around or anything, but it's because in practice, it actually works. And it's that you get what you think about most of the time. And I always like to follow in there, feel about as well. You see, those prominent members of society, so-called, those elite class of people, again, quote unquote elite, the royal families, the kind of families that were very prominent in society, some of the wealthiest people, they understood this idea of your focus and your attention. They understood that you are a powerful creator. You are a conscious being that is consciously creating, and the way in which you're doing that is through what you're focusing on, your attention, your intention. Essentially, you are creating your reality each moment through each observation, the way you're thinking, what thoughts you're observing and allowing, the way you're speaking, what words are you observing and allowing, the actions you take, and the feelings that you are entertaining. What feelings are you observing? What feelings are you connecting to? All of those culminating in what's going to show up in your reality. And so the quote, "You get what you think about most of the time," which was promulgated or made famous by Earl Nightingale in The Strangest Secret, rings very true and allows you to connect to this idea with a very simple sentence to remind yourself that your thoughts play a huge role in creating your reality. If you're thinking most of the time about negative stuff, well, I would bet any amount of money you have a lot of negativity in your life. You have the equivalent of negative in your life in the physical form. You have things that are distasteful. You have things that you don't enjoy and you would rather have something else. You probably have negative people in your life. You probably have a situation at work that you don't enjoy. Your relationships probably don't work out so well. Your health might not be where you want it to be. And I will guarantee that for someone who's thinking in that way, most of the time, those are some of the results they're getting. But this works on both ends of the spectrum. On the other side of the coin, if you think positively, genuinely and authentically, not someone who presents themselves that way, but then in the background is thinking all of this pessimistic, negative thoughts, but someone who genuinely, internally thinks positively, almost looks through the world with rose-tinted glasses and actually is grateful, actually is appreciative, and thinks from this place, you will always find in their life that their relationships seem to work out. They seem to always be financially taken care of, maybe even financially wealthy and free. They seem to be doing something they absolutely love when it comes to their vocation, and they love every minute of it. They're enjoying their lives. Every single time if I saw someone and I was able to look at their thoughts and the way they're feeling, it would always line up and always make sense. And so again, these quote unquote elite classes, all of these people dating back even to ancient Egypt, when it seems this information was handed to us, and that's a whole different topic, but handed to us from different sources on how to create our reality, they have known about this idea that our outer world, this physical world, one, isn't our main reality and isn't all that there is, but two, that it is influenced by the inner world. Now, the way to think of this is you are a three-part being. And it's just a simple way of putting it that gives a very good model of how you can utilize this practically. Now, we all know we're physical. You're looking at me now, and you can see kind of my physicality, the things in the background here. I'm looking at the camera, you guys, that's physical. And we perceive all these physical things through our 5 physical senses. And because we grow up in this way, we believe that this is all that there is. We are the physical. We are taught and grown up in the physical. We are perceiving with just our physical eyes and go, this is all that there is, and there might be a little bit outside of it, but this is my life. This is mainly it. But what the ancients knew, what people in these circles do know and have known for generations, for thousands of years, is that in fact, this thing that we think is the real of the real is just a mirage. It is just an outpicturing of something that is much grander, and that is what we call the inner world, which is the mental and spiritual part of yourself. And so no, you are not just this physical being, you also have this mental side of you. You can't see your thoughts. You can't materialize them in the moment instantaneously, although over time you can. You can't see your feelings, but you know they're there. You can't see your emotions or energy in motion through those physical senses, but you can still sense them through something greater, that they are there. You can feel the change and the contrast from one emotion to the other, from one thought to the other, how that influences your emotions as well. A lot of people can feel that connection to something higher, that connection to the divine, connection to God, to source, to the universe. And yet, these things are not physical. And yet, most of our reality is actually coming from this place rather than the physical. And one important concept to keep in mind, and whether you want to believe this or not is fine, but if your life has not been working in the ways that you want, I would at least implore you to be a little open-minded here and to change the way you look at things, because then the things in your life will change. But we now know that the outer world of the physical, that part of yourself, follows the inner part of yourself of the mental and the spiritual, meaning what you're doing mentally and what you're doing spiritually will lead to what you're experiencing physically. Like I said, you get what you feel about or get what you think about and feel about. The feeling is the spiritual side. So if you're feeling joy and happiness and gratitude and calm and peace most of the time, you will see the physical representation of that if you stay in that energy long enough in the physical. You will see this through different opportunities, new people, new events occurring that you then can take action from. You will see this through inspiration and ideas that start to come through your mind from seemingly out of nowhere, where you go, I don't know how I thought of that. I've never thought of this. Well, the trick is, it's probably not coming from you, but from something even beyond you. Something from, we can say, a realm maybe beyond the one that we're in, this non-physical realm, not the physical. Something that's not on your radar screen, we could say, but off it, now coming in, because you're not blocking it from appearing. And so keep in mind that you are a three-part being, not just physical. In fact, we have data now that shows that basically this physical reality that we have all grown up to believe to be real is not even as physical as we think. You can hear quotes, and again, coming from scientists, from physicists, that say if you were to take all of the empty space and energy out of every single person on the planet, you would be left with enough physical matter to fit inside a tiny sugar cube. That's how physical our reality actually is. It is mainly energy, empty space, vibration, frequency. This is our reality. And the outpouring of that, or the culmination of that, leads to what we perceive as the physical. Even if you were to look at yourself under certain scientific devices, anything physical, and you were to get to the core of it and just go deeper and deeper into what it's made of, we know it's made up of atoms, and we can go even deeper than that. But if you go deeper into the atom, what you will discover is something very, very curious. The atom itself, which we consider the building block of everything you're seeing on screen now, everything in your room right now, wherever you're watching this, everything when you go out in the world and see all that physical stuff is made up of atoms, right? If you look deep into the atoms, we can now see that the atom is mainly energy and empty space, and only a tiny, tiny percentage of physical stuff and physical matter. And those are the building blocks of all these things we call physical. In fact, it is about 99.999999% empty space and energy, 0.000001% physical matter reality. And so the things that actually make up the physical world, what we think is solid and physical, themselves cannot be regarded as physical. And I believe there's a very famous physicist who said this, and I can't remember if it was Max Planck or Werner Heisenberg or someone in that, it might have been Schrodinger, who said that our physical reality is made up of things that cannot be defined or regarded as physical themselves. You are not living in a physical universe. You are living in a physical world that appears physical, but is really born out of the non-physical. And when you go deep enough into it, we can see that it itself is non-physical. Now, why is it important to know this, and why is this a part of the formula that we get what we think about most of the time, and why is it important to understand this? Because when you understand that it's not as physical as you think it is, in fact, much less, and that this physical stuff is simply a result of what you're thinking, what you're feeling, essentially what you're doing in that inner world, the mental and spiritual, it allows you to switch your focus to being physically focused all the time to being more internally focused. You see, if you are always going around just trying to influence things as a physical being in a physical space, well, then you are just coming from that 0.00001% of what reality is. You are essentially trying to influence the effect rather than the cause. You are influencing the byproduct rather than the thing that created the byproduct. Whereas you could instead go right to the cause and be the one who's at cause rather than at effect. But how most people live their lives is they are always at effect to things, right? Something happens in their life and they react, and then they react to this and they react to that. They're at effect. Rather than looking at how can I be at cause? How can I be more responsible and elicit more change in my life? Well, when we start moving more into influencing the mental and the spiritual, which is happening in this very moment, we can start to do that by changing our thoughts, changing the way we feel, and we'll go over some things that can help you do this. Don't worry, some practical things. And when you do that, new results start turning up in the physical. Now you might be saying, well, why is it when I start thinking positively, I start feeling positively for a little bit, nothing seems to change, or maybe tiny little things change? That's a great question. And this is when we want to introduce another principle or law of the universe called polarity. And we want to take a look at basically, when you look at everything in the universe, and let's just say it's all energy or consciousness, it's actually everything you see is of a like kind. So even physical stuff is still energy. The difference is at a denser rate of vibration. Whereas when we get into more pure energy or thought, as we get higher up this pole, we're now going into things that are more instantaneous, right? If I told you to think of a particular thing, I want you to picture a very cute dog that's happy to see you. You can usually picture it pretty clearly, pretty instantaneously. It didn't take all this build up. It didn't take you, 5 minutes, 10 minutes to think of that. You thought of it immediately. Now, if I want to get you to feel something on that spiritual side, again, I could just say, you might even be feeling good from picturing that dog. I could say, hey, think of a loved one. Think of a cherished memory. Just bring up that. And you're going to start changing the way that you feel pretty instantaneously, because these are higher rates of vibration. They happen instantaneously or more quickly. Physical matter, however, is a very dense rate of vibration. So although it is still energy, it takes longer for it to come about. It takes longer to move that because it is more dense. It is vibrating slower. And so in order to influence matter, or to even draw in new matter, attract different matter into your life in the sense of your physical world, you have to concentrate your energy on a particular thing long enough in the inner world for the equivalent to start showing up in the physical, because you've put enough energy, enough thought in that particular direction. This is why you can't think positively for a week or feel positive for a week and get massive change in your life. Now, will you start seeing some changes? Absolutely. And if you capture them, you will start to notice it. However, when you can start doing this for a few weeks, when you can do this for a month, and you're doing that most of the time, you will absolutely start to see change. Again, we've had people in our program after a few weeks, all of these things start to pour in, more money, like their jobs taking off, their relationships going amazing, and then we help them keep going, because for a lot of people, they get there and go, okay, I'm good now, and then go back to, old patterns. But when you do this, your outer world does begin to change. And so through creating these new causes on the mental and spiritual plane of your existence, understanding that it's just going to take a little bit longer for it to come into the physical. Not that long, mind you, but maybe a few weeks, a month before you start seeing some more dramatic changes. By doing that, and again, focusing more on the internal, and then taking the actions that are inspired from that place, things are going to move so quickly for you. So this is that first part of the formula. You get what you think about and feel about most of the time. This is absolute. This is immutable. You can't get around this, and you can't trick the universe. Again, you can trick people perhaps. Again, there could be someone who outwardly looks like they're happy or fulfilled, and internally it's just absolute chaos, right? It's a messy garden with weeds everywhere. But the universe is just going to respond to your thoughts and your energy, and it will bring you things that are equivalent to that in your life through feedback, through signs, and through actual physical manifestations. So we'll put this on screen. That's the first part of the formula, is you get what you think about and feel about most of the time. Keep that in mind. It's also good to remember the idea that the outer world, so the physical world, follows the inner world. That inner world is, again, that mental and spiritual aspect of you. If you want to know what cause and effect is at a deeper level, it's understanding that the causes are created on the mental and spiritual planes, and the effects are what show up in your physical. A great way to put this is your physical world is simply an energetic, and we could also say mental history, what you've been thinking and feeling, over time, long enough until this point. And you are seeing that reflection in your physical life. And so if you see a history you do not enjoy, you can choose a new one by shifting your thoughts and the way you feel and emotionalize things now. Now, before we move on to the next part in the formula, let's go over a little bit of how you can start to get better with this, because you might say, well, this is all great. I need to think better and feel better, but how do I do that? Easier said than done. And yes, it can be for some people. If you're not used to thinking a certain way and you've kind of been unconscious with it, and we grow up in a pretty negatively influenced society for now. Consciousness is not at the all-time high. And so if you hook into that unconsciously and you're just along for the ride, you're going to be thinking negatively. You're going to have certain patterns and beliefs and subconscious, kind of ways of going about things that maybe don't serve you in this way, and you maybe don't feel so good. So we can use certain influences to help us here. One tool I'm going to give you, so I don't give you too much to bite off here, but something you can go out and actionize right away, is to control what's called your mental diet. And we can also call this your energetic diet. You see, if you put junk in, you're going to get junk out, right? And so It's the same with eating physically. You eat a bunch of bad food, you're not exercising, you're gonna put on weight. You're gonna have certain diseases and problems, and you'd have all these manifestations of having eaten that way start to appear. It's the same with how you think. It's the same with how you feel. And a lot of times our thoughts and the way we feel is influenced by what we consume mentally and emotionally. And so if you're watching things, for example, that put you in fear or make you paranoid or put you in a dark place, then you might want to consider getting that out of your mental diet. If you are around things that cause you to think negatively, again, it's like you're eating a bunch of cake and junk food, and maybe it feels good to do it because you're used to it, and some people like gossip and the drama. But just understand, if you immerse yourself in gossip and drama and all this negativity, you're going to experience more and more of that in your own life. And so my recommendation is to start turning your back to these things and choosing differently. Again, we can use this to our advantage. So instead of watching the things that put you in that place, watch things that inspire you. Watch things that make you smile and make you laugh and make you feel really, really good, so that you're in that energy, that help you to think in a different way. I mentioned The Greatest Secret by Earl Nightingale. That might be a good audio to listen to multiple times, because as you're listening to that, it is training your thoughts. Similar things to that. I love the book Think and Grow Rich too, but As a Man Thinketh. You can find really good audios of that on YouTube and listen to it multiple times. It's not only going to give you instructions on how to improve your thinking, but it is also, while you're listening to it, going to improve your thinking, because you're now starting to absorb the information and energy of that audio. And so using books, using media, even movies, very few and far between with movies, but you can, in order to influence your thoughts and your energy, is very, very beneficial to do. And by doing that enough, more often than not, and just tipping the scale so you're thinking more positively than not, it doesn't need to be 100 to 0, it might even be 52% to 48%. But just by tipping that scale, you're going to build momentum to get a lot better at this, and you'll start to notice that just as you're going about your day, you're thinking more positively. You're noticing you're being appreciative than complaining about things. You'll notice that your thoughts are more on that higher end of the consciousness scale, if you want to use that metric, or you're emotionally feeling a lot better, or noticing when you don't, and you're able to shift it and change it and choose differently. And so this is an amazing tool that you can use. Now, some other ones that are kind of obvious, but I'll throw them in here just as a reminder and to reiterate them, is certain internal practices, inner science we could call it, like meditation, like breath work, like visualization, is very, very useful. In fact, I have a mentor who will say, this is the stuff you want to focus on, again, because 99.9+% of your reality is being created from that internal place. And so if you're not taking the time, even like 30 minutes or so, to meditate, do visualizations, do breath work, do things that cultivate that inner, it's like you're leaving so much on the table. Again, you can go around doing all the physical actions, but almost none of them, especially when unguided, will equate to how much the needle will move forward by doing the inner work, raising that inner world, and then taking action from that place. A lot of people are busy being busy. They're hustling. They're grinding. But this is like throwing a million things at the wall and hoping one will stick. Maybe one will eventually, but be prepared to be burnt out and having to repeat that process, because that's what you've gotten good at. But you could also come from the inner world. You could also take inspiration from that place, which means a calibrated action, not a random action, a calibrated action. It's like a GPS telling you to go left and you actually following it on your way to the destination you want to go. And so that's the first tool I'm going to offer you here, and we'll go over a few more as we keep going through the video. But get control of that mental, and we'll say also emotional diet. Remove the things you know are causing you to be in that negative space, because whether you like it or not, that is creating your reality. You get what you think about and feel about most of the time. Second part of the formula, and this is huge, and this could be first, we could interchange first and second here, but I like going over the thinking stuff first and kind of how it works, so you have that information. You can start kind of thinking about that immediately and start putting things into place. But the second thing is you need to have a vision, a focus, and recognize your own power. You see, a lot of the people who we'll say are the parasitic, quote-unquote, elites, they understand that they actually cannot control you, but they can absolutely influence you to serve them in the ways that they want. This is why a lot of media is negative. This is why a lot of messaging that comes out goes, oh, you're a victim, poor old you. Why? Because it disempowers you, and it makes you want to look to other people and give your power away to them to fix your problems, right? But they've created the problems so that, that they can be fixed. Where at the end of the day, if you take responsibility for your life and recognize that you're a conscious creator, you're creating it all, you're suddenly going to change everything. You're suddenly going to be able to now create the reality you want for yourself. Instead of giving away your power, regardless of how that comes about, whether you say you're a victim or this person's better or whatever, if you give that away, you're basically using your own influence against yourself, your own power against yourself. And so what I'm getting here is you need to have your own dream and thing that you're aiming for. There's a very famous kind of story with Napoleon Hill, who's the author of Think and Grow Rich and the Laws of Success in 15 Lessons, which I highly recommend that book because it's basically the better version of Think and Grow Rich. It's the non-censored, non-Henry Ford censored version of Think and Grow Rich, if you want that. It was actually created before Think and Grow Rich. I think it was in the 20s, and Think and Grow Rich came out in like the 30s. So it's the original copy. But one of the things that Napoleon Hill said, and again, he was commissioned by Andrew Carnegie, to go out and study the most successful people. And these successful people, they were the ones in these circles, in these groups, in these families, and all of that. These were the Edisons and the Fords and so many other people, titans of industry and all that in that time. He studied them. He observed them. He got his foot in the door through his connections through Carnegie to ask them questions, to observe them. And what he noticed was a very particular thing that I'm going to give you here, that he basically said this, that when he started applying it himself, so when Napoleon Hill started applying this, he said it worked so quickly and so effectively that it frightened him. It happened so fast that when he applied this, his goals started manifesting and coming into his world so quickly that it actually frightened him. He was so shocked that this was the case, because he would have before that been used to people who almost never hit their goals, their lives maybe get a little bit better or a little bit worse year in and year out. But in a few weeks or like 2 months or under, basically with this, huge changes started occurring. And this is because you need to have an aim. You need to have a dream, a vision, a definite chief aim, which is what he was talking about, that hits a sweet spot, which I'm going to go over how that works. Because again, if you don't set yourself a destination, you are opening yourself up to someone else setting it for you. You always have some kind of aim. Even people who are like, you know what I want? I want nothing. It's still an ambition to get to the point of complete detachment, right? And if most people are being honest and not trying to just kind of spiritually high road other people, everyone has some kind of desire or goal in mind. Even if the goal is, I want to become enlightened. Okay, great. Well, that's still an aim that you have, right? And so when you have an aim, you allow yourself to get hyper-focused on that aim, to know what you need to do. And I promise you that when you commit to this, it's almost as if the whole universe conspires to help you achieve whatever it is, so long as it meets certain criteria, which we're going to go over. Now, I do have a full video that goes over this formula or this part of the formula in so much more depth. So at the end of this video, I will link you to that in case you want to go into this further. But essentially what you're going to do is you're going to choose a dream. This is where you really need to do some introspection and ask yourself, what would I do if I could do anything? If there were no limits, if I could never fail, nothing could go wrong, what is it I would want my life to look like? Would I want to be rich? Would I want a certain relationship? Would I want, to help out certain people in a certain way? What does that look like? And you'll be amazed, and maybe you won't be amazed, but most people have no clue what it is they even want from a deep place. And people know what they want from a surface level. I want to make enough to do this and do that. But do you know what you truly want from that heart-based place, from that spiritual place, from that deeper essence of who you are? And if you don't, I would implore you to figure it out. And if you don't, I would watch that video I'm recommending next after this one, because we're going to go over how to do that. But essentially, you have that dream. You've now selected the direction you want to go in. You then create what's called a DCA, a definite chief aim. Now, what's cool about a DCA is it's more practical. The dream is kind of like you're up in the clouds, right? You're really just allowing yourself to daydream and just kind of have that North Star. A DCA is when you bring it back down to earth and make it more practical. And so you can think about the dream being all heart-based and kind of just dreaming as big as you can, and the DCA is what is practical and you allow your mind to come in. You see, if you allowed your mind to critique the dream, it would just keep putting up blocks and limitations because it's just like, well, we can't do that, how are we gonna do that? But with your dream, the how is none of your business, right? If you knew how to do it already, it wouldn't be a dream. It would just be a small thing and like, oh, I wanna make a little bit more money next year. I want that kind of tiny promotion or whatever. We wanna dream big and then focus very specifically, focus small as we keep going towards the dream. And so the DCA, or the definite chief aim, is something where you're still excited about whatever it is, but your mind is bought in and believes you can do it. You don't want your mind sabotaging you. It's a very, very powerful instrument, and so we allow it to be something that we believe we can hit, but which is exciting at the same time. Napoleon Hill called this the sweet spot, and this is the thing he was talking about, that when he did this, things happened so quickly that they frightened him. Because to a lot of people, they hear that and go, okay, well, it's not that big a thing. I believe I can hit it, but I'm excited about it. I mean, what's that really going to do? But this is one of those things where if you do the work and trust the process, you'll see what it's going to do. Things will start moving very quickly. You build momentum and energy in a very particular direction. And remember how important energy is, what we're putting our focus on. And you'll find that you hit your DCA pretty quickly. Then you can make a new one. With this new one, you'll now be way more confident because you've hit a previous one. So you can make it probably even bigger and still believe it, and then so on and so forth. And I've seen people just absolutely crush their goals through doing this and manifest so much because they build this very quickly. But they have this momentum and focused, concentrated particle flow or energy in a particular direction. They're following daily action steps and everything else in order to hit it, but they are so focused in and know exactly what they want that, again, it's almost as if the universe conspires to make this happen with you and cooperates with you in creating this. But you need to have that direction and North Star. Again, as you have this and you've planted that seed in the ground, you're following that North Star, you're focused on your thoughts and your energy and really bringing that about, things start to fly. This formula really starts to come to life, and all of this stuff can start changing. That energetic history starts to shift very quickly. Now again, check out the video at the end where we'll go over this formula in even more depth. And again, it's just, if you don't have this, it's not even so hard. It's almost impossible to start creating reality in the ways that you want. You are a conscious, powerful being and creator. But if you're not consciously creating, which means you don't have no direction where you're going, if you don't have that, you can't create. And again, you're just allowing all these other outside influences in to basically take control of that process for you. And that almost never ends favorably for you. This is very much kind of a victim mentality. Life happens to me, I'm just going to let it do its thing. And again, you're just going to be hijacked. But you can take control, you can recognize what it is you want. Again, get your thinking right, get your emotions right, and then you'll be off to the races. And more will start coming in. So now to really start completing this formula, you have two very key pieces. And again, this might be something you think you know, but you really just know about it. There's a huge difference between information and transformation. Ultimately, if your life is not where you want it to be, and these things haven't been working for you, you don't really know it, right? You know about it. It's information at this point. Until you've kind of materialized that and experienced that, it's something that you need to keep working on. In fact, you'll always be working on this. I still work on it. People who are well beyond me keep working on it. People who I mentor under and everything else. Is an ongoing process because you're always in process. But one thing I'm going to give you here that can be very useful and is going to help you with this is when people go down and start doing this, they do what's called raising the significance. So they create this vision for themselves, and it's genuine. They make a good one. They understand their thoughts and their energy, create, and kind of everything that works with that. And we've gone over, again, more nuance of how this works and everything in these videos on my channel if you want to explore that. But then they do something that blocks their manifestations from coming in. And it's called raising the significance or raising the importance. People start getting so hyper fixated on this has to come in, or my life will be incomplete, or whatever else it is, that it actually creates blocks and prevents it from doing so. You see, once you have all this set up, understand, again, the thought and the energy. If you're desperate for it, if you're needy for it, what kind of thinking and what kind of energy are you now engaging in? Again, how important is energy in your thinking? Well, you get what you think and feel about most of the time, so it's pretty damn important. So if you start getting needy and desperate about the goals you're trying to obtain, if you start going, I'm going to be miserable until I get these goals, putting all this emphasis on this is going to change my life and this is going to be it, and you can't enjoy yourself now, you're never going to get the goal. You are going to make it so what's called balancing forces never allow that to come in. These universal principles will never allow that to come in because you are not worthy of the goal at that point. You are not vibrating at that same level. You are saying, oh, when this comes, then I'll feel good. This is it reminds me of an analogy where basically there's this guy in the cabin and it's really cold, and there's like this wood stove that's there that he could use for warmth. But he can't find any logs at first, so he goes to the wood stove and says, hey, I don't have any logs for you, but if you provide me with the heat, then I'll be warm enough to go get you some logs. And it basically replies, I can sympathize with your predicament, but that's not how it works. You have to provide the logs first, and then I will provide the heat. And I will be more than happy to do so, but you have to do that first. And most people are trying to get the heat without providing the logs, doing what they have to do to actually start that process and getting that in. And so what that means is you have to think and feel first these feelings. You can't, oh, I'm gonna feel great once it's here. You feel great and then it starts to come. Again, you feel great, which is the equivalent of you putting the logs in the stove, and then the result, the flames, the heat will be produced. But if you're not doing that, that will never occur. And again, this is just a natural principle in law. You can deny it or whatever else, but you can easily test this to see if this works. And it works for every single person I've ever seen that actually tests it and does it, right? Again, not dipping their toe in the water, but fully going, I'm actually gonna see, I'm actually gonna find out, I'm gonna fully commit to this and go down this path and see if this actually works, right? For real. Right? And so you have to put the logs in first. You have to feel great now. And so if you raise the importance, you're going to feel crappy and put all this emphasis on it and you'll never achieve your goal. But if you reduce the significance, take off the importance and go, you know what? This is what I want, but if it doesn't happen, it's perfectly okay, right? If it's, maybe it'll be this or something better. You know what? I know the universe has my back and everything's going to work out for the best. If you do that every single time, you're starting to raise that significance, you will start having these things fly in. You can imagine that when you raise the significance, you're almost creating this block or barrier in your life from all these things that you want to come in from getting in. And they're trying to get in, but they're just being knocked back by this barrier. Once you reduce the significance, this barrier is taken away and these things can start coming in. Again, if we really break it down, the reason this happens is because when you're raising the significance, how are you feeling and what are you thinking? Well, now you're thinking about what you don't want. Now you're thinking negatively. Now you're thinking you can't have the thing. You're going into fear, emotionally. You're going into apathy. You're going into, maybe frustration. And so then that's what's being produced in your life. And so when in doubt, make sure you reduce the significance. You can come back on watch, again, when you raise, you can do the thing with the mental diet and everything. Watch some stuff that helps you to tune back into this material. You can do plenty of different things. Have an accountability partner. Whatever it is you're going to do, it is essential that you reduce the significance because you'll never get there if you raise it. Next part of this formula is, again, a very seemingly simple one. And what you're going to notice with all this is they almost seem simple to a point of being like, that can't be how it works. But it really is. And the reason people don't get results isn't because it's not simple. It's because they don't stick with it. It's because people, again, do not have the discipline or do not develop the discipline that's needed to think in a certain way and feel in a certain way. And so they just dismiss it as woo-woo and this doesn't work. But again, you can go out and prove this wrong if you want to by not applying it. But you could also go out and prove it right. Now, in my eyes, the benefits to proving it right are you change your life. You create your reality. All of these amazing things happen. The benefit to you proving it wrong and going on that negative scavenger hunt is you stay exactly where you are or worse. This will work for you if you work it. This will absolutely produce new results if you commit to it. But you have to do that first. Again, you can't get the heat without putting in the logs. The results do not and will never come before you've done your part because you are a conscious creator. You have to take the action. You have to start thinking differently. You have to start speaking differently. You have to take responsibility for your creation. Nothing will happen. Nothing will change for the positive until you do. And what's great is this next part of the process. It actually makes it so it's very pleasurable to follow this formula. It might be difficult because you have patterns and you have these old things fighting for your attention, like negative beliefs and all that. But again, the more you just spend in positive stuff, in positive environments, your mental diet, all that, the more this will change. But this next one is so amazing that the better you feel, the more you feel good now and actually come from that philosophy, the faster this works. And so the more that you actually develop that spiritual side of yourself, that mental side of yourself, and you feel good and you do things that help you feel good. And don't get me wrong, when I say feel good, I mean consciously. We're not talking about hedonistic stuff and all that. Again, what is the consciousness level? Because it might be something at the level of desire, like base desire, which is pretty low in consciousness. It might be something at pride, pretty low in consciousness. We're talking about feeling good now from things that light you up, put you in joy. You're excited, you're calm, you're peaceful, you're willing, you're accepting, you're courageous. These kinds of things. If you feel good most of the time and you have set a destination, you've planted that seed in the ground, be prepared for that seed to absolutely explode upwards. Be prepared to hit destinations faster than you could have possibly imagined. but you have to do this. And again, the funny thing is, I'm just telling you, you need to feel good. And so many people have trained themselves not to, that this almost feels like an impossible kind of imposition in a sense. But again, like anything else, you'll get better at it. And so one of the best ways to get good at this is to start writing out what does make you feel good. Most people don't even know. They might have one or two things, but you should have a list of like 20 things you know help you feel good. And again, this is something that over time you'll get better at. But the better you feel, the faster these things start coming in. There's actually, I've had so many mentors tell me that some of the most successful people, they're always doing things that are different than what they say in the public, because a lot of them will say, oh, I work, a million hours a week or whatever else. And for a lot of them, it's not true. Some of them it is true, but don't get it wrong. They love what they do. So when they're working, how do they feel? They feel great now, right? They feel good. They don't feel bad. They don't feel like most of, the rest of us felt or feel at like a 9 to 5 that we don't enjoy. So we're like, oh, work sucks, right? They enjoy what they do. But the amount of stories I've heard where there's this crisis in what they're doing, this so-called crisis, and they go golfing, and everyone's confused to why. Well, they understand this idea of feel good now. They know that getting immersed in the problem and getting stressed, what's that doing to their thoughts? What's that doing to their energy? Not anything good, and it will perpetuate the problem. So they know, you know what? I'm going to go do something I enjoy. I'm going to go golfing. I'm going to go fishing. I'm going to go to this event. I'm going to go do this thing. And so many times through doing that, by the time they're finished, or very shortly after, whatever the problem was, has resolved itself because they were feeling good. The better you feel, the better you think, solutions present themselves. Again, cause, effect. The way you think, the way you feel leads to the physical effects. And so when you feel good now and you prioritize this, again, that 99.9+% that actually is creating your reality, the energy, empty space, the thoughts, the energy, the emotion, energy and motion, the more you're doing that, the more openings you will create for yourself, the more opportunities that your mind knows not of, but are absolutely out there and can come in from the unknown when you give it the opening to do so. And so feeling good now is one of the final parts of this formula that you want to work on getting better at. And so the simple way to do this is, again, the mental diet, the digital diet, the energy diet is, again, so great at this, because you'll notice when you're watching certain things, you feel like crap, but you're addicted to it, the drama or whatever else, so you keep doing it. I would implore you and invite you to stop, right? But there are other things you can watch that, like you might have tears of joy in your eyes. Do that more. There might be music you listen to that light you up internally to the point where you're like, oh my God, I feel so good. Do that more. There might be people you hang out with that just light you up and you just love spending time with them. Hang out with them more and stop hanging out with the ones that make you feel like garbage. That would be a good one too. That sport you love playing, but you haven't been giving yourself time to do, go do it. You like to dance, you like to sing, go do it more. Golf, fishing, whatever it is. Have a list of things you know are 10 out of 10s, light you I was gonna say, well, I might as well say it, light you the fuck up, and go do them more. Now, there are general things you can do. For example, most people enjoy massages. Most people love saunas, going for a walk in nature. Being in nature, which is a high energy, will influence you. But the better you feel, the faster your manifestations come in. The better you feel, the more you can create your reality faster, because it will, again, from this inner place, allow you to create the outer world from there. And you'll start to see that this is really how it's working. Again, just a few weeks of doing this to the best of your ability, you will notice changes. You have to, because it's law. You will notice that things in your life begin to shift. You will notice that certain people leave, certain people come in. Different opportunities start showing up. You will notice that that goal, if you set one, is starting to come to fruition. That seed has already broken through the surface in the ground. And so, here's the whole formula. Again, there's nuances to this, there's things we could add, but if you just did these things to the best of your ability, if you committed to it, go out and get help, whatever it is, you will start seeing changes. And again, be honest with yourself about whether you're really doing these things. So again, get what you think about, feel about, have a dream, have a DCA, have an aim, feel good now, lower and reduce the significance. And by doing these things and diligently applying them, again, not one and done. This is not a one and done thing. You are always in process. Another mistake a lot of people make, I've done it, so I know it. You do not. You do not. You can always know it deeper. And again, when you take your attention off it and you forget about it and you can't apply it in your real life, then it's useless and it's not going to actually work for you. So if you do all these things, you're going to start noticing new results. Now, if you do want help with this, if this is something where you're like, I'm ready for the next level, I'm ready for results right now so fast. You can take a look at our coaching program, Max It, where you'll get to work with me. And again, we give you the whole thing. It's 3 months of live coaching, just working close with me and some other coaches with a very small group of people who are all committed to this work. The energy in there is insane, and we are getting unbelievable results in here. We're talking about transformations in a few weeks, in a month, and then continuing from that process. We're talking about not only getting those transformations, but recognizing and understanding how you can create your reality anew time and time again. So once you've hit one phase and you graduate and you're like, oh, it's time for the next thing, you know exactly what to do. And so if you want that guidance, you want that accountability, you really want to get this, I recommend that you take a look at the program, which you can learn more about through the first link in the description. It'll give you a little bit more, and then you can hop on a call with someone from my team to see if it's a good fit for you. And if so, we'll bring you in. If not, no harm, no foul. At the very least, from that call, you'll get some more clarity on what you need to do. Anyway, thank you so much for tuning into this video. Let me know if you enjoyed this kind of way of me filming it. Anyway, I promised you this video next too, if you want to continue the journey. This is how you're going to discover your dream, DCA, and so much more. Again, the principle Napoleon Hill said when he learned it and did it, how effective it was and how fast it worked actually frightened him.